Stand down immediately. That's an order. That's what the U.S. military officer shouted at the royal guard before grabbing his rifle. But when the silent sentinel finally broke his stance and spoke, his response left everyone speechless, including the decorated major himself. So what exactly did he say? Want to find out? First hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now without further ado, let's get into it. Morning mist clung to the Tower of London as black SUVs with diplomatic plates lined the entrance. Guardian Christopher Fletcher stood near the crown jewels exhibit, his scarlet uniform a vivid contrast against the ancient stones. Not a muscle twitched as he maintained his disciplined 1,000-yard stare. Major Scott Davidson of United States Special Operations emerged from the lead vehicle, surveying the fortress with obvious skepticism. Quaint, he muttered to Captain Rodriguez. Like stepping into a military museum. Major Davidson called to Lieutenant Worthington, the British liaison. Welcome to the tower. Let's skip the pleasantries, Davidson replied, his handshake brief. I'm more concerned with why we're conducting security assessments in a tourist attraction. This tourist attraction houses the crown jewels, Worthington replied professionally. Today's exercise will help integrate your protocols with our security framework. Davidson's attention fixed on Fletcher, and these ceremonial soldiers are part of the actual security detail. His tone made the question sound like criticism. Davidson's reputation had preceded him. His file detailed a career of unconventional approaches and remarkable results. He'd revolutionized hostage extraction protocols in Kabul and neutralized the Santiago cell in less than 4 minutes. The major doesn't believe in security theater, Rodriguez explained to Worthington. In Baghdad, he replaced ceremonial guards with disguised tactical teams, prevented 3 suicide bombers within a month. Davidson overheard and turned sharply. Centuries of predictable patterns and visible vulnerabilities. Today's threats exploit exactly the kind of rigid protocols your guards exemplify. In the security center, Davidson highlighted what he called critical exposure points on the displays. These fixed guard positions are the first vulnerability, he stated, circling Fletcher's post. Predictable intervals become calculable factors. For hostiles, Colonel Bennett frowned. Major, the Royal Guards are fully operational soldiers, not statues. They maintain full situational awareness despite their ceremonial appearance. Today's exercise will expose these weaknesses, Davidson continued. My team will conduct penetration tests. Your team hasn't been cleared for penetration testing on active duty guards, Bennett objected. Davidson gathered his tablet with decisive movements. I can't modernize your protective methods by following the same protocols I'm meant to improve. These ceremonial positions project the illusion of security while creating actual vulnerabilities. As Davidson left, Colonel Bennett turned to his colleagues. Monitor his team closely. By mid-morning, Davidson had disappeared from the command center. Worthington finally spotted him circling Fletcher's post and hurried across the courtyard. Major Davidson, the command briefing began 15 minutes ago. Davidson barely glanced at him. I'm conducting a field assessment far more valuable than another PowerPoint briefing. He nodded toward Fletcher. Your ceremonial guard hasn't acknowledged a potential threat for 47 minutes. American security specialists in civilian clothing had positioned themselves around Fletcher. One operated an unauthorized signal detector. Major, your team hasn't been cleared to bring electronic scanning equipment into this sector, Worthington said quietly. Protocol is exactly the problem I'm addressing, Davidson interrupted. This guard's primary function appears to be posing for tourist photographs while presenting a static target. Davidson positioned himself within arm's length of Fletcher. In any actual security scenario, this position would be compromised within seconds. Fixed position, limited visibility, distinctive uniform designed to draw attention rather than enable response. 2 more team members appeared with equipment cases not included in the approved inventory. These are standard monitoring packages, Davidson replied to Worthington's objection. If your security can't handle basic observation equipment, that's another vulnerability. The American team established a perimeter around Fletcher's post, disrupting the tourist flow. Your Royal Guard hasn't attempted to report our activity, Davidson noted with satisfaction. In a real-world scenario, hostile actors would have established complete surveillance by now with 0 resistance. Fletcher remained perfectly still. If the activity around him registered at all, his bearing gave no indication. Attention all units. Initiating code Sierra 4. Response assessment commencing now. Major Davidson's voice crackled through an unauthorized override of the tower security channel, catching the British security teams off guard. Colonel Bennett's, the voice cut through the confusion. Negative. No. Authorized drill in progress. Maintained standard protocol. Despite the calm authority in his voice, Davidson was already moving to the next phase of his improvised assessment. He positioned himself in the courtyard, digital tablet in hand, as he typed rapid commands. His team members activated small devices that began mapping security, sensor coverages and response patterns. Major Worthington hurried across the courtyard, no longer hiding his frustration. You have no authorization to declare exercise protocols on this channel. You're creating confusion among active security personnel. That's precisely the point, Lieutenant Davidson replied without looking up. Real threats don't schedule their arrival through proper channels. Your response to unexpected situations. It reveals your actual capabilities, not your rehearsed ones. Tourists watched with uncertain expressions, some backing away from what appeared to be an escalating situation. British security began quietly redirecting visitors to other areas. Your team is interfering with actual security operations, Worthington insisted, lowering his voice. This isn't how joint exercises function. Davidson finally looked up. Every ceremonial guard represents a resource that could be deployed for actual security. Instead, they're standing motionless while potential threats move freely around them. He gestured toward Fletcher. My team has established complete surveillance coverage around him, and he hasn't responded in any observable way. 3 more team members appeared, dressed as tourists but moving with the purpose of trained operators. They positioned themselves strategically around Fletcher's post in a formation any security professional would recognize as hostile. Initiating penetration test phase 1. Davidson announced deliberately loud enough for Worthington to hear. Simulated hostile actors in position at target Alpha. Major, stand down immediately. Colonel Bennett's voice came through on Worthington's radio. You are exceeding exercise parameters and creating an actual security incident. Davidson ignored the command, focused on documenting Fletcher's non-response. Note the time, he instructed his team. Guard position compromised for 7 minutes without response or reporting. A group of schoolchildren entered the courtyard, their teachers struggling to maintain order as they excitedly pointed at the Royal Guard. The British security team quickly redirected them away. You're disrupting legitimate visitors now, Worthington said, his patience clearly strained. This exercise needs to return to approved parameters, immediately. The exercise is revealing exactly what I predicted, Davidson replied. Your ceremonial guards compromise actual security by maintaining positions that prioritize tradition over effectiveness. This has gone far enough, Worthington stated firmly. I'm requesting you stand down and report to Colonel Bennett immediately. Davidson's response was to turn back to his team. Initiate Scenario 2, he ordered. Let's see how your stationary guard handles multiple simultaneous approaches. The dismissal was clear. Davidson had no intention of curtailing his unauthorized assessment. The midday sun cast stark shadows across the tower grounds as Davidson initiated the next phase of his assessment. Tourists gathered in growing numbers, creating a constant backdrop that Davidson seemed to view as an operational advantage. Perfect conditions for a real-world breach, he noted to Rodriguez as they approached Fletcher's post. High civilian presence creates visual noise and complicates response options. Davidson positioned himself directly before Fletcher, deliberately occupying his line of sight. Your situational awareness is compromised, he stated loudly. I've been in your direct field of vision for 37 seconds without acknowledgement. Lieutenant Worthington had been joined by 2 senior British security officers. They maintained a monitoring position rather than direct intervention, still attempting to preserve the diplomatic framework despite Davidson's increasingly provocative approach. In American security doctrine, fixed positions like this would be eliminated immediately, Davidson continued, circling Fletcher. They create recognizable patterns that any halfway competent hostile can exploit. His critical assessment wasn't merely for Fletcher's benefit. He was performing for the gathering crowd. An elderly gentleman in a Royal Marines veteran's cap approached the British officers. Is this meant to be happening? It seems rather disrespectful to the guard. It's part of a joint exercise, Sir Worthington replied diplomatically, though his tight expression suggested otherwise. Davidson positioned team members to simulate a hostage scenario near Fletcher's post. They performed with practiced precision, one restraining the other while maintaining a direct line to Fletcher's position. Note the guard's complete non-response to a simulated hostage situation, Davidson dictated into his recording device. Priority threat developing within direct line of sight with 0 acknowledgement. The simulated scenario created visible discomfort among tourists, several backing away with concerned expressions. A mother hurriedly guided her children toward the exit. Your ceremonial guard has failed to identify, report or respond to 3 separate security scenarios, Davidson declared. In any objective assessment, this position would be classified as a critical vulnerability rather than a security asset. Fletcher maintained his disciplined stillness despite Davidson's deliberate provocations. The same training that allowed him to stand motionless for hours enabled him to ignore distractions that would break most soldiers' concentration. This is becoming untenable, one of the British security officers muttered to Worthington. He's deliberately undermining established protocols in front of civilian visitors. Davidson approached Fletcher again, examining his uniform with exaggerated scrutiny. Impeccable presentation, he acknowledged, though the practical applications of a bearskin hat in modern security operations remain questionable at best. He addressed his remarks to the watching tourists. What you're witnessing is the fundamental difference between security theater and actual protection. These ceremonial positions create the impression of security while actually compromising it through predictability. Major Davidson Worthington called, approaching with determined strides. A word in private. Please. Davidson waved him off. We're in the middle of a critical assessment phase. Lieutenant, my team is documenting response patterns to escalating scenarios. This has gone beyond assessment into public spectacle, Worthington replied, keeping his voice low but firm. You're creating security concerns rather than addressing them. Davidson's response was a dismissive glance. Your guard hasn't moved a muscle despite multiple security scenarios developing within his protection zone. That's not discipline, it's a failure of adaptive response. The tension between the American and British security teams had reached a critical threshold, with Davidson seemingly intent on pushing boundaries until they broke the afternoon shadows, lengthened as Davidson's assessment reached its culmination. His team positioned specialized equipment throughout the courtyard, tactical smoke generators commonly used in urban warfare training. Final scenario deployment in 3 minutes. Davidson instructed his team. Maintain civilian safety protocols but execute the full breach demonstration. Worthington's urgent radio communications had brought senior British security officials to the scene. They maintained a perimeter position, still attempting to resolve the situation without alarming visitors. Major Colonel Bennett is requesting your immediate stand down. Worthington made a final attempt. This exercise has exceeded all authorized parameters. Davidson's response was coldly professional. The exercise will conclude when we've completed our assessment. The entire purpose of our presence here is to identify security vulnerabilities. He checked his watch. Final phase initiating now. At his signal, the device is activated simultaneously, releasing billowing plumes of white smoke that filled the courtyard. Tourists gasped and backed away, several reaching instinctively for their children or companions. Though harmless, the psychological impact was precisely what Davidson had intended. Security breach simulation in progress. His voice cut through the confusion. His team moved with tactical precision, creating patterns through the smoke that simulated a coordinated infiltration. The British security officers responded immediately, moving to secure visitors and establish control zones. Their training evident despite the unauthorized nature of the simulation. Radio channels filled with rapid coordination as the tower's actual security protocols activated. Davidson moved directly to Fletcher's position, the smoke swirling around them. Guardian, this position is compromised, he announced with authority. I am Major Scott Davidson, United States Special Operations, NATO Joint Command. This is a direct order to stand down from your post and redeploy to secondary position Delta. Fletcher remained perfectly still, his disciplined bearing unbroken despite the chaos. His white-gloved hands gripping the ceremonial rifle remained steady, his gaze fixed forward through the artificial fog. Guardian, acknowledge the order, Davidson demanded, his voice taking on the edge of a battlefield command. Your position is compromised. Stand down immediately. Nearby tourists had drawn back to what they perceived as a safe distance, many recording the unusual scene. The British security team had established a perimeter, professionally managing the situation while awaiting senior command decisions. This is a direct order from a senior officer in a NATO joint operation, Davidson continued, frustration evident. As Fletcher maintained his position, security protocols require immediate redeployment when a position is compromised. He reached out suddenly, grasping the barrel of Fletcher's ceremonial rifle. Your adherence to ceremonial protocol is creating an active security risk. Stand down now. The physical contact with the guard's weapon, a line that every visitor knew should never be crossed, sent a ripple of shock through the watching crowd. He touched the guard's weapon. A teenage boy whispered loudly to his father, "You're not supposed to do that." Davidson maintained his grip on the rifle. This is not a request, Guardian. This is a direct order from a superior officer in an active security situation. Stand down now. The standoff had reached its critical point. Davidson's deliberate provocation against Fletcher's unwavering discipline. In the artificial fog surrounding them, two fundamentally different approaches to military bearing and protocol faced off in a test of wills. For a moment, Guardian Fletcher remained perfectly still, despite Davidson's hand gripping his ceremonial rifle. The courtyard had fallen into an expectant hush, tourists and security personnel watching the confrontation with held breath. When Fletcher finally moved, it was with such precise control that observers later described it as mechanical in its perfection. One moment he stood in ceremonial stillness, the next, his white-gloved hand moved with fluid efficiency to remove Davidson's fingers from his rifle. Major Davidson, Fletcher spoke, his voice carrying the crisp articulation of British military precision. You are in violation of Royal Protection Protocol 157B regarding physical contact with the Queen's Guard or their equipment. This constitutes a Category 1 security breach requiring immediate response. Davidson's expression shifted from commanding to momentarily stunned. He clearly hadn't expected any verbal response, much less one delivered with such unapologetic authority. Furthermore, Fletcher continued, his gaze now directly meeting Davidson's. The smoke deployment devices your team activated triggered a silent security protocol. 12 seconds before you approached my position, tower security teams were already responding when you issued your order. Fletcher's bearing never wavered. While your NATO rank would ordinarily command appropriate respect within joint operations, Tower of London protocols establish clear jurisdiction regarding the chain of command. The Queen's Guard operates under the direct authority of the Crown, not NATO command structure or visiting military personnel. Davidson attempted to reassert control. Guardian, this is an active security situation. It is a simulated scenario deployed without proper authorization, Fletcher corrected. Royal Guard standing orders specifically address interaction with Allied military personnel during joint exercises. Standing Order 157 explicitly states, Guards will maintain position and protocol, regardless of exercise parameters unless relieved by a proper chain of command. As Fletcher spoke, the British security team efficiently deactivated Davidson's smoke devices. Tourists watched in fascination as the confrontation continued. My primary duty is to the Crown, Fletcher stated with quiet authority. That duty includes maintaining prescribed position regardless of simulated scenarios or unauthorized commands. This isn't a matter of disrespect to your rank, Major, but rather absolute respect for the oath of service I have sworn. I should also inform you, Fletcher continued, that your unauthorized exercise has been officially terminated by Joint Command. Colonel Bennett has requested your immediate return to the command center. Davidson's face flushed slightly, the first visible crack in his professional demeanor. You've been monitoring command channels while maintaining your post. Of course, Major Fletcher replied with the faintest hint of professional pride. The Queen's Guard may maintain ceremonial appearance, but we are fully integrated with all tower security systems. Each guard station is a functional monitoring point with direct communications to Central Command. He gestured subtly toward his ceremonial rifle. This weapon is ceremonial in appearance only. It contains integrated communications equipment, and is fully operational should defense of the tower become necessary. The revelation visibly shook Davidson's assessment. What he had dismissed as theatrical pageantry was suddenly revealing sophisticated security integration that his analysis had entirely missed. Your assessment proceeded from a fundamental misconception, Fletcher explained, his tone remaining respectfully professional. You evaluated ceremonial appearance as a security vulnerability, failing to recognize that the ceremonial aspect itself serves a tactical purpose. Predictable patterns create a false sense of vulnerability that potential hostiles consistently misinterpret, as your own assessment has demonstrated. Your order to stand down from my post would have created an actual security vulnerability, Fletcher concluded, by removing a functioning monitoring station from the integrated security network. My refusal wasn't ceremonial rigidity, Major. It was operational necessity. The command center had transformed into a scene of tense professional reckoning. Colonel Elizabeth Harlow, commander of the Royal Guard contingent, stood with perfect military bearing at one end of the tactical table. Across from her, Brigadier General Robert Westfield of the United States Army had arrived to personally address the situation his subordinate had created. Colonel Harlow, please accept my sincere apologies for this breach of joint exercise protocols, General Westfield stated. Major Davidson's actions represent a significant deviation from authorized parameters. Davidson stood at parade rest beside his commanding officer, the earlier confidence replaced with the stiff bearing of an officer facing potentially serious consequences. General Westfield, while today's incidents were unfortunate, they've provided an opportunity to demonstrate the integrated nature of our security systems. Colonel Harlow replied diplomatically, perhaps we might use this as a learning experience for both commands. She activated the central display, showing the confrontation between Davidson and Fletcher. What Major Davidson couldn't have known was that Guardian Fletcher is not merely a ceremonial sentry. He served 3 tours with special reconnaissance in Afghanistan, including joint operations with American forces near Kandahar. The display shifted to show classified mission statistics. His team provided critical extraction support for your 5th Special Forces Group during Operation Silver Crescent. 2 of your men returned home because of his unit's intervention. Davidson's expression flickered briefly with recognition. Furthermore, Colonel Harlow continued, Guardian Fletcher was selected for Royal Guard duty specifically because of his exceptional tactical awareness and discipline, the same qualities that made him effective in combat zones. The ceremonial aspect of his current posting is additional to his security function, not in place of it. Lieutenant Worthington entered with Guardian Fletcher, now in standard military dress. Guardian Fletcher, Colonel Harlow acknowledged. Major Davidson has something he wishes to address with you. General Westfield gave his subordinate a pointed look. Davidson stepped forward, military professionalism overcoming personal pride. Guardian Fletcher, I owe you an apology, Davidson stated. My assessment proceeded from incorrect assumptions about your role and function. I failed to recognize the integrated nature of your position within the overall security framework. Fletcher acknowledged with a precise nod. No apology necessary, Major. Different security traditions approach the same objectives through different methodologies. Colonel Harlow activated another display showing the tower's integrated security system. The Royal Guard represents the visible aspect of our security presence, Major Davidson. This visibility itself serves tactical purposes, creating predictable focal points that draw attention while more covert measures operate without observation. Hiding in plain sight, General Westfield noted with professional appreciation. The ceremonial aspect creates a security distraction. Precisely, Colonel Harlow confirmed. Potential hostiles consistently focus on our ceremonial elements just as your assessment did, while overlooking the integrated systems operating beyond the visible pageantry. Davidson studied the security schematic with renewed interest. The ceremonial guard creates a predictable pattern that actually masks the unpredictable elements of your security response. When Fletcher finally spoke, his words carried the weight of both military experience and personal conviction. If I might add, Major, the ceremonial aspects you identified as vulnerabilities have tactical advantages beyond security distraction. The discipline required to maintain ceremonial bearing translates directly to combat situations where maintaining position despite provocation might mean the difference between mission success and failure. Davidson considered this thoughtfully. The same focus that allows you to stand motionless for hours, allows me to maintain surveillance positions in hostile territory without detection. Fletcher completed different application of the same discipline. As the professional discussion continued, the earlier tension gradually transformed into genuine exchange between security professionals with different approaches but shared objectives. When Guardian Fletcher was dismissed, Major Davidson extended his hand in a gesture of professional respect. Your response to my provocation was exemplary, Guardian. Perfect discipline with appropriate protocol adaptation. Fletcher accepted the handshake with precise military courtesy. Your security assessment, while unorthodox, identified several integration points we'll be reviewing, Major. Different methods, shared security goals. As Fletcher departed with Lieutenant Worthington, the senior officers returned to reviewing the day's events with an eye toward improving future joint operations. What had begun as confrontation had transformed into an opportunity for professional growth that would strengthen the security partnerships between traditional approaches and modern methodologies. Have you ever witnessed a clash between tradition and modern approaches? How important do you think ceremonial roles are in today's professional environments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on balancing tradition with innovation. If you enjoyed this story about respecting different approaches and traditions, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insights into the Royal Guards and the values they represent. Don't forget to press the notification bell so you'll know immediately when we post tomorrow's story at our regular time. Share this video with friends who appreciate military traditions or anyone interested in how different approaches can work toward the same goals. Check out our other Royal Guard stories appearing on your screen right now. And we'll see you tomorrow with another compelling story that reminds us what true service looks like. *.